Hello, and welcome to today's tutorial on importing images from your camera or your camera's memory card into Lightroom. Although this is fairly easy to do, there are a few steps to be done prior to getting going. So let's go through the process. First, I want you to determine where your RAW files or your JPEG files are going to be stored. Generally, this should be on a drive or folder that has a specific and recognizable name. This will make it much easier to find the files in the future to process them. In this tutorial, I will demonstrate my method and my organization. Although I have found this works for me, your system can certainly be different. It just needs to make sense to you and be something that you will remember to do each and every time you connect your camera. Before we get going, I do want to talk about what you see on my desktop here. On the far right, you will see that there are a significant number of drives. And I want to take you through what these drives are, as they each have a specific purpose. On the very first icon you see, Macintosh hard drive, that's actually just my computer. And on this, I keep really only the applications that I'm going to use, and most of those are photo processing, but they're only applications and a handful of files. But I don't actually keep any of my images on this drive. Next, you're going to see 3 terabyte photography drive. This drive is actually an external drive in which I keep stored backups of all of my RAW and JPEG files. Below that, you see 2013 backup. This particular drive is used specifically for backing up files that have been processed and are ready to be shared publicly. I like to back all those up, as well as having them saved elsewhere in my system. The next one you'll see is 2013 images. This drive will be used for where Lightroom is going to save the files. So this is really what I would consider my first save of the files, whereas 3 terabyte is the backup of the raw images. Next, you'll see 2014 backup and 2014 images. These drives are just formatted and ready to go as we're here at the end of the year, and I want them to be available to me first thing off the bat and have their structure. Next up is the iTunes drive. This is all my music, and I keep these files separate just out of general principle. I know that I will use a lot of space on photography in any given year, and it's just easier not to have to move files later, so I do keep my music separate. Next up is no name. The no name folder, file, is really, that's my camera memory card, and it's in a card reader. That's why it comes up as opposed to identifying my camera. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The next up is Time Machine, and this is a backup of the Macintosh hard drive, and basically that's just there. I keep it separate. I just don't ever want to take a chance of overwriting anything, as well as for space concerns later as I start building files through the year. So for today's tutorial, we're going to be focused on 2013 images and the 3 terabyte photography hard drive. So before we open up Lightroom, what we need to do is create the folders into which our RAW or JPEG files are going to be moved by Lightroom. So let's do that really quick. So our first step is going to be to open up both of the drives in which we're going to store files. So first off, we're going to open up the 2013 images, and we're going to, as you can see here, I have 2011, 12, and 13. We go ahead and open up 2013, and we're going to right-click or select from wherever you need to select to get a new folder, but generally right-clicking works. So I'm going to right-click and say New Folder. And in this case, I'm going to, as you can see, it has an untitled folder, and I'm going to say Pacific Northwest. October 2013. So that's all we need to do. We can close that file. Next, we're going to open up the 3 terabyte, because again, this is where I save all of the originals for my backups. We're going to double click 2013. Takes a second because there's a lot of files in here. And same exact thing, new folder, Pacific Northwest, October 2013. So we're done. And you'll need to do that just so that so when you go into Lightroom, you're going to be able to locate those files and have Lightroom do the rest of the work for you. So now we're going to go ahead and open up Lightroom. And as you can see, we land here into the library, but we're going to import. So what we have in the library is sort of irrelevant at this time. So we're going to hit the import button here in the bottom left-hand side of the Lightroom window. When you go ahead and hit import, in fact, in this case, it actually automatically found that I had a disk attached. So as you can see, no name up in the upper left under source comes up, and the images that are on this card are checked. Now, if there was something here that I didn't want to import, I could simply just uncheck it, as you see in the middle of the screen. But in this case, all of these images are good. Now, it does give you other options in your import window for places, for sources of files. And as you can see, all of my hard drives are listed here as well. But in this case, I don't need any of these. I've attached my card reader, it has my memory card in it, and so that's why I'm picking no name. What you find over here on the right-hand side, under it says to Macintosh, which is an option. I could file things directly into the pictures folder, but again, I don't like to put files within the hard drive of my computer because it will only start using up all of the hard drive space, and therefore not leaving enough scratch disk for my programs to run quickly, which is what I prefer. So in this case, I'm going to tell Lightroom where is to move the files. The next thing you'll notice here in the very center, top center of Lightroom screen, you can either copy in as a DNG file. That's if you want to use the Adobe designation. It's a file structure that they've created. I actually don't. I leave them in my camera's raw file. So in my case, I'm going to use copy. And what it's telling you below when copy is highlighted in this light gray is it's copying to a new location and adding to the catalog. What Lightroom does is add in the thumbnails so you can see your images within Lightroom, but it is not absorbing the files, which is very cool. So it's going to copy them to the location we tell it, and then what we're going to see is a thumbnail and a new in our folder structure within the Lightroom library. So over here on the right, you'll see it says build previews. Now it may have you may have minimal selected, which is fine. Minimal brings in just a minimal amount of information, and then when you go to double click that, it actually builds a standard preview before you can start working on it. I've chosen to just go ahead in the first place and just build standard. It makes it a little bit faster in the processing. You can build smart previews. This has its function. If you want to have a preview that you can actually work on and process, you can build a smart preview. I would say that generally, unless you're going to be unplugging the hard drive and taking your, say, a laptop with you and wanting to work in the field, there's no reason to take up the space to build a smart preview. It's also slower on import. So I don't generally select this. You can also select don't import suspected duplicates if, say, you're using a memory card that you've used before and you only want portion of the files, like the newest files, to be uploaded because you've already uploaded a different set. In this case, that's not necessary, so I haven't checked it. Next, it says make a second copy too. This is where Lightroom will automatically make a second copy of your raw files while it's importing and copying the new files. So in this case, we would go ahead and select it, just click on that, and we would pick our 3 terabyte, and we would come down to where it's hidden my 2013 folder, which I'm not seeing now. There we go, 2013. And we would go down till we get, because it's by name for me here, and we'll scroll all the way down until we see the Pacific Northwest, October 2013. So we're going to go ahead and select that and just simply say choose. So now what we've told Lightroom is that while you're copying my files from the memory stick to their future location, their main location that's going to be attached in our library, we also want a backup created, and that's what the make second copy means. So then in terms of, you could do file renaming if you so choose. If you want to give something a different name and say you wanted every file to say Pacific Northwest instead of the raw file, I don't generally use this. Then also apply during import. This is if you have presets that you want to automatically apply to the images. Could be sharpening, could be a white balance correction, could be just about anything. I don't generally do this. I like to make my decisions on processing one image at a time. Next up, you can import some metadata, and so I actually have a metadata set up. If you wish to set it up, you can create new, and in that you would choose the new, you would title it, and you would fill out the data that you want to have embedded in every file. And I would generally suggest, like what you see here on the screen, give it a copyright. If you've actually registered the images with the Copyright Office, you can actually choose to say that they are copywritten as well. And then I also do the creator. So I put my name and I give my city, the state, email, phone number, website, so on and so forth, so that that data is with every raw image and every processed image. It's just embedded into the EXTF data. So right now, because I already have a metadata file created for myself, I'm just going to hit cancel here and then go back and say select my Denise's metadata. Next up is if you had keywords you wanted to apply, and recognizing that they apply to every single image. So in this case, you would have, maybe I would say beach or ocean or Pacific Northwest or whatever. Any of those things that you could tag that apply to every single image in the file, then that's what you'd want to put here. Now, if I had some images of people, but I wanted to recognize those as people, I would not necessarily put it here, even though there are images with a couple of folks in them further down here. Right here, we've got a couple people. I wouldn't want it to say people on all the ones in where there was no one standing. So I wouldn't necessarily want to use that as a keyword at this time. So the next thing is the destination. And here you are actually looking for the destination where we set that first folder up, which was the 2013 images. Under 2013, we created a Pacific Northwest, which is now highlighted. You can go ahead and select that, just click on it and it's selected. The next step is really just to hit import and have Lightroom do its thing. So we're going to go ahead and hit import, and as you can see, it takes us back to our library. And what's happening now is on the left-hand side, you'll see this file, where the mouse is, and I've just selected it, and you'll start to see that it's populating with images. So it says 2, now it says 5, and so on and so forth. And this is the process. As I need to let this finish, and when it has, all those images, which I believe are 37 or 38 images, will be in this folder. And as you can see on the top left-hand corner of the screen, it says copy and import photos. That's exactly what it's doing, and you'll see this little white bar extend its way across to the X, and when it's finished, that'll go away. Now that the import's complete and we're still looking at our libraries view, you'll see that in the top left corner now, it's building the standard previews because that's what I had selected. So it's got a few more to go, and then that'll be finished. And once that step is finished, then our import is complete. What you will see over here is this now shows you where your library is, and in my case, it's showing you the library contains the 2013 images off the terabyte, and it has a folder that says 2013, and then below you'll see highlighted in white the Pacific Northwest with 38 images in it. So all of our images have now been moved from the no name, which has disappeared from the right hand side of the computer. You'll see that because the images have been moved, it's ejected it, and now you can pull that out of the card reader or disconnect your camera, and you're all set. It's already kind of booted the whole thing. It has not deleted the images though. So when you go to use your card again, you'll need to either format or delete in your camera. The other thing I'd just like to highlight really quickly is some other stuff here in the left-hand navigation bar. You can create collections, which we'll talk about in a different tutorial, and there's published services, which we will also talk about in a different tutorial. So for now, that's it, and that's how you import into Lightroom and retain a backup of all your raw files at the same time. Thanks again. Look forward to seeing you in the future.